Hiya, I'm ThatJaymsWisdom, and this is another episode of the tentatively named And Another Thing. Alright, so last week we had a Naked Truth. This week we have our other thing. So And Another Thing is my working title for this sort of format, this sort of show that's every other week on the Naked Truth. And here I just talk about stuff that's happened during the week and what I thought about it, really. So let's start with a kind of follow-up to what happened in the previous And Another Thing, which was me talking about, who I was going to vote for in the general election in the UK. And I voted, and we had the results, and we've ended up with a hung parliament. For those of you who don't know what hung parliament means, it basically just means that no party won a majority of the seats in the House of Parliament, and therefore they can't make a majority vote on a particular thing or a majority decision on any things going forward. So the government is what's called a hung parliament now, meaning that there's no one really in charge, I guess. The Conservatives did get the majority of the votes, not the majority of the votes. They got the highest number of votes, with Labour second, but overall they don't have a majority when you take everything else into consideration. So basically what's happening now is the Conservatives and Labour are both trying to get enough people from other parties to agree to not quite a coalition, but to agree with them or to back them as the majority holders, so the leaders of the country, and go from there, really. So that's where we're at after that. So I want to talk about that because that was kind of an important thing. Of course, the other big thing that happened in the news in the last week or so is the massive tower block fire in London, which has been a horrific incident that is being fully investigated at the moment, but it seems very, very avoidable, or it would have been avoidable if the concerns of the residents had been taken notice of in good time, because they've been complaining about it being unsafe, there being a bit of a fire death trap for a while. And then there was a fire and, loads of people died. I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head the final number, or even if they have a final number now, but this was a big disaster. People throwing children out windows because it's hoping that someone will catch them when they get to the ground, because otherwise they're going to burn alive or suffocate from smoke inhalation or whatever. And the stories that people were telling about, what they experienced in these not office blocks, this tower block fire, is really horrific, and it's really, it needs a full, thorough investigation, which of course is to take place. But with hung parliament, we're also in that situation of things like this get trickier to investigate and that kind of thing. But still, that's been a big thing in the news. I don't want to talk too much more about that because we talked a lot about that kind of disaster type stuff previously. So what I want to talk about, really, I've got those kind of politically things or like current affairsy type things out the way, is I thought I'd talk a bit about E3 and my thoughts on E3. So this year's E3 came and went in the last week or so, and there was lots of things coming out, things that are interesting. So there are particular things that are interesting to me, and particular things that are not interesting to me at all. So we have a new Xbox One X, which is clever in its naming when you abbreviate it, because it's Xbox B 10X. So the abbreviation of Xbox One X is Xbox. So that's why they've called it that. It's a stupid name. It's a terrible decision to have gone with that name, but that's what they did. And I see why they did it. It feels clever. It's a bit too clever to market well, but they've gone with that. And it's basically a high-powered version of the Xbox One. It's a very, very high-powered bit of hardware, but it's quite expensive. And honestly, I'm not interested in the, the PlayStation 4.5 or the Xbox One X. I'm not interested in that really myself, because I've got a PS4. It's fine. and you know, unless games come out that specifically have to work on that console, I'm not going to bother. And even then, I would probably just go, you know, that game is probably not for me if I have to buy a whole new console to play it. So actually, on that note, for me, not winner of E3, there's always this winner of E3 thing, and I don't know that there was any winners this year. Everybody took it seriously. Everybody seemed to do a good job of presenting their games, but there was nothing that really excited me and really made me go, wow, this is a great, you know, outpouring of stuff that's coming in the next 2 years. I'm so excited. There's the odd game here and there that I'm looking forward to, but generally speaking, I don't know if there's anyone that won E3 for me. However, Nintendo did put out their Nintendo video. They don't do a presentation in the hall. They just put out their big video for E3, and it showcases a lot of really cool looking games for the Switch. There's a lot of talk of the Switch getting a lot more third party support than previous consoles have had, like the Wii and the Wii U. Like anyone had a Wii U anyway. But you know, the Switch seems to have come off with a lot of really interesting looking games, a lot of really cool looking stuff. You've got Mario and Rabbids, which looks like an XCOM kind of game, which everybody's talking about being really interesting. There's the new Mario game with the hats, which looks weird, where you kind of possess a dinosaur with a hat, or another person with a hat, or another creature with a hat, which looks weird but kind of cool at the same time. New Kirby, all of these things that are due out at some point. Now, the big thing for me is I don't own a Switch, and I had not planned on buying one. But I think what I'll do with this selection of games coming out is wait for them to come out and then think about maybe getting myself a Switch, because I've seen a Switch. It's quite a cool console. It's quite small. It's quite good as a portable thing. Actually, I wasn't expecting it to be quite as good as it is in portable form, but it looks good, and I would be interested to maybe get one down the line. For me, it's probably like 2 years away for me to get a Switch, because these games aren't coming out in the next year. They're going to be the next 2 years, and my big problem has always been with Nintendo consoles that I'm not that interested in most of the Nintendo franchises. Some of them I like, and they just don't have that many games outside of their own franchises. So it becomes, you know, I buy one game every 6 to 12 months for the console, and then it's like, I never play it, so I start playing something else. And so we'll see. When there are lots of games out, I'll have a look and maybe pick one of those up, which is big for me, because I had no interest whatsoever in the Switch as a console. I was like, yeah, I'm done with the Nintendo thing. I don't need it. I've got my PS4. That'll do. So on that note, there were a few cool looking games this year at E3, but I don't really have anything that I'm super excited for. Weirdly, I kind of want to get Battlefield 2, which is the Star Wars first person shooter that came out a while back. They did one of those, and this is the sequel to that, and this looks like it's kind of a much more expansive game than the original. The original was you played as the Rebels or the Empire in pretty much online combat, massive big teams of people fighting against one another, and you might get to spawn as the Sith or the Jedi on either side of the team or whatever, and that was cool enough, but I'm not that big a Star Wars fan to care. And I said when that game came out, though, I'm not playing it until they give me the droid army to control. So now that this one does have battle droids that you can play as, I am kind of on board, and it does look kind of cool. So we'll see what the reviews are like, see what it has in terms of gameplay, and I might pick that up. I don't know. We'll see down the line again with that one, but it kind of got me interested, so it did a good job of presenting that. The Sony conference I thought was quite good. I mean, as a PS4 owner, it was the one I was the most interested in. And you've got some cool looking stuff. You've got another Uncharted sort of spin-off game coming, but there was no talk whatsoever about the Last of Us sequel, prequel, whatever it is, the new Last of Us game. There's just no talk of it. It wasn't mentioned at all, which is a bit of a shame, because it was teased last year and it was the big news last year. Now we haven't seen anything of it. The game that I was most looking forward to, however, was Detroit which is a game about sort of android robot people who are basically slaves, or basically utilities for people. So they buy an android and it does their housework or whatever it does, and there's like an uprising of the androids actually trying to break the androids out and like fight for justice and equality and all that kind of thing. And it's by the people that did Heavy Rain. Now, they teased this a couple of years ago and I was really interested in it then. And for me, I thought, wow, that looks really cool. I want to play Detroit. I really want to see what this is like. But it looked a little bit more kind of, I don't know, like a detective story with the kind of choices in the decision making changing the gameplay. And they seem to have changed that quite a lot in the way they've done that. And it looks cool, but it does make it look a little bit more kind of generic in terms of it's a third-person action adventure game where at certain points you get to decide how you're going to interact with whatever else is going on. So in the trailer they show the armed police coming to these two androids, and you can kind of blend in and hope they don't notice you. You can hide behind a car, or I think you can just attack them straight out. And that will progress the story in a different direction. So I love games like that. I'm a big fan of games like that, and I'm going to be looking into this, but I find it slightly less interesting all of a sudden than I did before I knew more about it, I guess. But for me, like, there wasn't anything that really blew me away. There's some really, really pretty looking games. Beyond Good and Evil, or the sequel to Beyond Good and Evil, Beyond Good and Evil 2, the cinematic that they showed for that was just gorgeous. It looked really cool. It was kind of like really fun and had this charm to it. They were a bit overly sweary. They just did it a little too much. They went just like one step too far with the swearing, to the point that it felt unnatural and like we're going to swear a little extra just to make it more 18 feeling. But yeah, they had some swearing in it and it worked, and it just felt right with the characters. And then the monkey character just started, he swore just a little too much and it kind of ruined it for me. But it looks cool, and everybody really likes Beyond Good and Evil, which was out on the blooming GameCube back in the day. So it's been a while, so we'll see what happens with that. And so for me, that was kind of E3, and yeah, it looks cool, but I mean, there's nothing that really excited me this time around. Otherwise, kind of things I've done in the last 2 weeks, I mean, I've been to the cinema a couple of times, as I always have. As I do, keep an eye on my Twitter. If you don't follow me on Twitter, follow me on Twitter if you want to see my Twitter reviews of films, because I put them up there every week. But yeah, for last week, I saw Wonder Woman, and I was really impressed with Wonder Woman, actually. I am a fan of DC in general, but I've hated the films recently. They've been really bad. And the new Wonder Woman film isn't a disaster. It's not amazing. I found it fairly predictable, and it's kind of heavy-handed in some aspects. But once it gets going, and once you see Wonder Woman, like, wrecking shop, like, storming through World War I scenes, and saving the day in a very heroic way, it just looked good and worked well and just felt very visually interesting and superhero-y in a way that wasn't a mess like some of the others we could mention. The other thing about it is the soundtrack is phenomenally good. I was so impressed with the soundtrack, the sweeping score of Wonder Woman jumping through, a window or whatever it was, with all this like background music booming up, and it just felt really, really good. So I encourage you to go and see that as well, if you haven't already, because I mean it's a cracking film, really. The only other thing I really wanted to talk about was just how hot it is. It's been insanely warm in the UK over the last few days. You can probably tell just by looking at me that I'm a bit drenched in heat at the moment. I've been just like overly hot for the last 3 days constantly. I'm sweating in my t-shirt. I've been showering twice a day and changing my clothes most days twice as well, just because it's just so hot. If I get in a car, by the time I get to the other end of my journey, I need to change because I'm just sweated through. But it's been between like 28 and 32 degrees for the last 3 days, and it's set to go on for another few. Blazing sunshine. Everybody's very happy, I'm sure, those people that like the sun, but it's just a bit too hot, I think, personally. I just want autumn to get here already. But that's another thing I just thought I'd mention. And honestly, I don't really know what else to say. I've had some other stuff going on personally this week with a death in the family and stuff like that. So that's taken up a lot of my time. There was also Father's Day yesterday. That was really nice. I enjoyed Father's Day yesterday. Took my dad out well, we went to see my dad play cricket, and then we took my dad out for a meal, and then, you know, so it was just a nice day yesterday. But otherwise, it's been kind of all over the place this week. So yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I don't really know whether this format is working yet. It's more just kind of like The Naked Truth, but with me wearing clothes and me rambling about more than one topic. So I don't know whether it's working. If people have any opinions, you want me to talk about specific topics in the weeks to come, please let me know, because it's not always easy to just think of things off the top of my head that I want to talk about. So yeah, please let me know if there's stuff you want me to talk about. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe and all that. Main thing is though, follow me on Twitter for those film reviews. That's what you want to do. Keep smiling. Thank you very kindly, and I'll see you all next week for A Naked Truth. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please, you know, like and subscribe and all of that. Twitter and Instagram is to one side of me. Naked Truth below me, and last week's And Another Thing is beside that.